Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a bit late for Shavua Tov, but it is a Chodesh Tov. And we'd very much like to welcome all of you here this evening. May I ask that you now kindly turn off or mute your cell phones. I'll wait until everybody's ready to listen. May I tell you about a forthcoming event before we speak about this evening? We have a winter lecture series lecture on Motzei Shabbat, the 30th of November. Be in here at 8 p.m. and the lecturer is Elkan Levy. You know Elkan very well, most of you. And the title of his lecture is Maimonides the Man. Should be quite interesting. So now I have much pleasure in again welcoming Barry Shaw to McDonald's and to thank him for spending some of his precious time, because he seems to be doing so many things at the moment. And I will now introduce him to give his lecture, and afterwards I'm sure he will answer our questions. Also, I think that for a few minutes after his lecture, we have Harry Saul Markham from London, who's going to tell you a little bit about what he's doing in an activist for Israel in London. So, Barry Shaw originates from Manchester. He made Aliyah with his wife and 3 children after competing in the Maccabeah Games for Great Britain. They lived on kibbutz for many years until moving to Netanya. Barry served in the IDF in a special artillery unit, seeing service in Gaza and Lebanon. He is International Public Diplomacy Director at the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies. He was the co-founder of the Netanya Terror Victims Organization. He writes commentary and research articles in strategic Jewish and Christian papers and magazines abroad, as well as in the Jerusalem Post and Jerusalem Report. Barry is hyperactive in inspiring new global recruits to Israel's cause, and is a writer, speaker, and motivator for Israeli truth. He has initiated many grassroots and professional groups offering them methods, facts, and bullet points to help them advocate effectively for Israel. To this end, he's authored several books, including BDS for Idiots, Fighting Hamas, BDS and Anti-Semitism, and Israel Reclaiming the Narrative. I think I better put my glasses on. 1917, From Palestine to the Land of Israel. His new bookseller is A Tale of Love and Destiny about Anna Aronson. Barry now lives in Ramat Polek with his wife Carol, who we see here this evening, and we welcome Barry to address us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
I'll give you some.
Good, thank you. Good evening. Full house. Right, okay. Hope you're not going to be bored. In fact, I'm going to be keeping you at the edge of your seats. I want to start by prefacing this by saying, is it echoing or is it okay? Can you hear me?
No.
Higher? Okay, fine. Right. Okay, I want to start off by prefacing by telling you that I'm what I call an equal opportunity offender. So in my talk, I want to tell you, for me, from my perspective, whether I'm talking about, first of all, let's see, how many people are here from Britain? Hands up. Ooh, majority. United States? No one else left. Wait a minute. Switzerland, I know.
Ireland.
South Africa? Ireland. Okay, South Africa. Right. Australia, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Right, now, why I want to find out who the audience is because, as I said, being an equal opportunity offender, I just want to make my point that for me, I'm neutral. I'm not for or against Labour in Britain, for or against Conservatives in Britain, not for the Democrats, and not for the Republicans. I'm neutral until it comes to Israel and Jewish issues. and then I'm not neutral anymore. And I will attack any of those who are attacking or damaging my country and my people. So I want to give you a strategic overview with personal anecdotes from my experiences and observations as we spin towards 2020. Just want to make sure these things work. Okay, it's working, that's good. Look, from my perspective, we're in a very difficult situation, a very interesting, difficult place. I'm going to give you a perspective you've never seen before. And I'm going to say, by admitting that some of the faults that really affects us, people like us who are trying to be effective advocates for Israel, have been caused by the failure of our past leaders who veered away from what was right and legitimate in their expertise opinions into something that has put us, quite frankly, in diplomatic jeopardy, maybe even strategic jeopardy. So, listen carefully to their words. Can't get beyond 2. Wait a minute. Why isn't this working? Can you? Shall we go down the list? There we go. Right, let me start with this. Until 1967, Israel did not hold an inch of the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, or the Golan Heights. Israel held not an acre of what is now considered disputed territory, and yet we enjoyed no peace. Year after year, Israel called for and pleaded for a negotiated peace with the Arabs. And their answer was a blank refusal and more war. And the reason was not a conflict over territorial claims. The reason was and remains the fact that a free Jewish state sits on any territory at all. It is in this context that the Palestinian issue must be appreciated. Now, why wasn't that statement repeated ad nauseum? It's as relevant today as it was decades ago when it was spoken by Yitzhak Rabin. Where are we post-Rabin? Today, post-Oslo Accord, disputed territories these days is now considered Israeli-occupied Palestinian land. So where was the courage and the commitment of these people who were sacrificed what they originally believed in? For the sake of what? Palestinian peace? Where's the peace today? Another quotation. The establishment of a Palestinian state means the inflow of combat-ready Palestinian forces, more than 250,000 men under arms, into Judea and Samaria. This force, together with local youth, will double itself in a short time. It will be not short of weapon or other military equipment, and in a short space of time, an infrastructure for waging war will be set up in Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. Israel will have problems in preserving day-to-day security, which may drive the country into war or undermine the morale of our citizens. Those of you living here in Israel know full well the morale of our southern citizens on the Gaza border has been seriously undermined, and those in the north are seriously concerned. It went on. In time of war, the frontiers of the Palestinian state will constitute an excellent staging post for mobile forces to mount attacks on infrastructure installations vital for Israel's existence, and to impede the freedom of action of the Israeli Air Force in the skies over Israel, and to cause bloodshed among the population in areas adjacent the front line. Ladies and gentlemen, in a two-state solution, you are all here in Netanya adjacent to a Palestinian front line. Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres persuaded Rabin to reconsider what they both thought was ill-advised, to withdraw from territory in the compromise for peace. This included less than 8 miles from where we're sitting tonight. Today, we are fighting the results of the legacies of Rabin and Peres. The solution, it seems, is we haven't surrendered enough of our land. According to the Palestinians and those who support them, we have to keep giving up our land until we've got nothing left. Let me show you what this means to us here in Netanya. My organization, Israel Institute of Strategic Studies, took a drone and we sent it up the 6 road. The road you're seeing here is the 6 road. On the right, you can see the security fence here. And there, this would be Palestine. The distance between the 6 road, which is the main north-south transport artery, is only 70 meters from our security barrier in the heart, in the vulnerable coastline of Israel, in the middle of Israel, just a 15-minute coast ride to the Mediterranean coast. What I would like to have shown you would have been a photograph where this designated Palestinian area is in fact further north, which is Tulkarem, right up to the border. Because without this wall, which is a concrete wall, they were shooting from the rooftops of the houses in Tulkarem on the drivers driving up and down the 6 road. I want to remind you that it was most of the suicide bombers that came here to Netanya came from Tulkarem. This is what they want to give, for us to give to them to create a 2-state solution. I took once the BBC Asia correspondent to the security barrier by Tulkarem, and I told him this was the first time in recorded Jewish history that we Jews put ourselves in our own ghetto. There is nothing this side west of the wall except, apart from the 6 road, the fields of the kibbutzim and the moshavim, Kfar Yona, where my daughter lives, and Netanya, where you live. This is what they want us to give up to the Palestinian in the name of peace. How about Gaza? The populated sections of Gaza had become in 1970 an area controlled by the terrorist organizations because the Defense Minister Rabin decided to evacuate the towns, villages and refugee camps. Fortunately, we returned to the correct policy before the Gaza Strip exploded like a festering abscess, which could have poisoned the entire surroundings. But because of the mistaken policy of fleeing from population centers, he meant the West Bank, and refraining from eliminating the danger in its early formative stages, we had to conduct a more difficult and lengthy campaign. The final sentence is telling. Gaza will become a launching site for rockets. Guess who said this? Arik Sharon, no left-winger. He withdraw, Gaza will become a launching site for rockets. And yet what did he do? He removed 9,000 Jews from the Gaza Strip, handed it over to the Palestinians, and it became what? A launching site for rockets. Do I respect our professional assessments of our top political, military, and intelligence leaders? Not much. When you get these contrary policies from our revered leaders, is it any wonder we end up with the misguided and misdirected Jewish youth groups acting against us? Some of our think tank experts still push for a 2-state fallacy. They say that Palestine will be demilitarized. What, you mean like Gaza? And southern Lebanon? I don't think so. How does this work out in real geostrategic terms, in real terms, not the fantasies of so-called experts? A further retreat from our land in the cause of peace. I'll show you the threat to Netanya. Now let me show you what we at ISS discovered when we went up on the high ground overlooking our narrow coastal belt. And what we saw there in certain places is very enlightening and telling. This is the high ground above the Sharon coastal belt. This is Haifa, this is Tel Aviv, Netanya's here. Okay? The other side over here is the high ground going down to the Jordan Valley, which is spoken about a lot. This part isn't spoken about all that much. So what do we get from here? When we went up on the high ground into a village that would be Palestine, this is what we saw, the power station near Hadera. What's a drone? What's there? We were standing there with a camera. We went to a place called Rantis on the high ground. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Tel Aviv. This is what you would see through the binoculars of a Palestinian terrorist when they control the high ground. This is Ben Gurion Airport from Rantis, Palestine. This is a plane taking off from Tel Aviv as seen by a Palestinian, maybe terrorist, with a shoulder-held rocket launcher. If that plane came down, or even those on the tarmac over there were blown up, who would fly into Israel tomorrow? Nobody. They're telling me that this would be demilitarized. Give me a break. The major issue is not attaining an agreement, but assuring the actual implementation of an agreement in practice. The number of agreements which the Arabs have violated is no less than the number they have kept. Shimon Peres. So why did he go to the White House with Yasser Arafat, persuading, cajoling Yitzhak Rabin to do it as well, shake the hands of Arafat, get awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, and not take any responsibility when Arafat came back and launched what he called the Intifada, which is a major, major terror campaign of suicide bombers, bus explosions, and everything. Because he was making peace with an arch-terrorist, perhaps the first major arch-terrorist, and nothing was done. Not by Israel, not by the international community, to first of all ensure that our partner for peace, the Nobel Prize winner Yasser Arafat, was in fact a peace partner. On the White House lawn, he made this statement: he believes in peace of the brave. I can tell you, as the founder of the Netanya terror victims, he gave us peace of the grave. Is this what's going on today? This is what's going on today. Are they prepared today for peace? This is the Palestinian Authority, considered our peace partner. They are still paying millions and millions of dollars paid by British, American, no, the Americans stopped their aid, European taxpayers for their pay-to-slave policy. Now, this semi-military looking outfit giving the Nazi salute. Do you know who they are? They are university students at the Palestinian Al-Quds University. Where is Al-Quds University? In Jerusalem. This was taken 2 months ago at a Palestinian summer camp, where the kids and the youth are learned how to fire rockets, as well as being indoctrinated about the need to kill Jews. I showed you this one from Al-Quds University. I can tell you there's another university called the Birzeit University, who for the last 3 years, the student body, have elected students from particular political parties to represent them in the student union. And overwhelmingly, in Birzeit University, they elect the students representing Hamas. Birzeit, well, you would think Hamas, Birzeit must be in the Gaza Strip. Do you know where Birzeit is? It is 5 miles north of Ramallah in the West Bank. It is 5 miles north of the Palestinian Authority, and yet the future generation Palestinians, their opinion makers and influence makers, are Hamas students in Palestinian universities. I'll say now and I'll say it again. If it's ever going to be a Palestinian state, we will go to bed with Mahmoud Abbas and we will wake up in the morning with Hamas. Now, Professor Amnon Rubinstein from Meretz party was a minister of education. Not since the time of Goebbels has there ever been a case in which a continual repetition of a lie has borne such great fruits. Of all the Palestinian lies, there's no lie greater or more crushing than that which calls for the establishment of a Palestinian state in the West Bank. You're kidding me. Empty, ineffective words. What is he talking about? Meretz is the main prognosticator for a two-state solution today. Now, due to this confusion, Israel is in retreat diplomatically. And what is the Israeli government doing about it today? Not much. It is against this conflicting narrative that we in the public diplomacy and activism world are struggling to create clarity. And our great leaders have, in effect, made our role infinitely more difficult. Our generals and politicians have left us to fight our cause without one harm basically behind our back. There are appeasers, then our leaders, and today the Jewish youth in the United Kingdom and in America are becoming anti-Israel appeasers based and tied to the Palestinian cause. So how do we win the hearts and minds against an onslaught of anti-Israel lies and hate with a narrative of an affirmative Zionism? And perhaps it begins with a dead camel. Why a dead camel? Because I make the point that the two-state solution is a dead camel. When it began, at the Oslo Accord, the majority of Israel, according to the polls, just about 70% of Israelis were prepared to give peace a chance, to quote the Beatles. But today, if you ask Israelis about a two-state solution, the latest poll gave it at something like 75, 77%, said absolutely not. And it's not because of anything that Israel is doing. It has got everything 100% towards what the Palestinians are doing and what they are not doing. The two-state solution is dead. It's a dead camel. The only problem is it's being dragged through the burning sand of the desert because the people who still think that a two-state solution is alive and well think that somewhere in the distance over there, there is an oasis called peace. What they haven't realized is that in fact their fevered mind think they're looking at an oasis, but they're looking at a mirage because they haven't come to truth, to the facts on the ground. The dead two-state camel is dead. So, where do we go from here? Israelis are smart. They've come to realize a two-state solution will not give us peace. A two-state solution will bring the killer's knife that much closer to our throats. Two states with Hamas controlling the other state? No thanks. Let these people who demand a two-state, let them first convert the Palestinian Authority, Fatah and Hamas into absolute peacemakers with guarantees in their obligation, but they'll refuse to do that. It's only Israel they castigate. So what are we left with? We're left with the institutionalization of Israel hatred, from the United Nations to the European Union to the Labour Party in Britain to the Democratic Party in the United States. The institutional hatred of Israel. I'll deal with this in an absolute devotion to the Palestinian cause. I'll come to this, by the way, this was a slide I just made up. I got it from Hillel Neuer, who was from an organization called UN Watch. This is what some of the members that are members of what's called the United Nations Human Rights Council today. Look through the list here. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Somalia, Nigeria, Qatar, Egypt, Cuba, China. All the epitome of human rights. Joining them in January is going to be, believe it or not, Venezuela, Mauritania, Sudan, and Libya. Human rights. What chance has Israel got where these people are talking human rights against us? Where do these haters come from? Right? They come from the campuses. And what is the campuses today? The campus in both Britain and America and some other countries have become a factory of indoctrination. The engineers are the radical professors and lecturers. Thought is regimented or banned. Open-minded learning replaced by dogma. It's the closing of the academic mind. Academia has become Pravda. Coming off the conveyor belt are the next generation's influence and opinion makers who will continue to control the mind and the lives of future generations. A part of that affects Israel and Jews. Anyone who saw my presentation earlier this year, the Corbyn threat to Israel, will recall that I ended that talk with a prediction that we could see a coalition of anti-Israel Corbyn in Downing Street and a radical left Democratic Party governing America. I said that earlier this year. This could come into happen next year in Britain and in America. Everything hinges on their elections, perhaps as much as our fate hinges on our own. We see a growing coalition of the left with the Islamists. We call it a red-green alliance. We see them marching in the streets of London with their red flags and their Hezbollah banners. We see them marching in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. today already. Their slogan is, "White is might and black is right." It's race and gender trumps all. Pardon the pun about Trump. And if you're not on the right side, meaning on the far left side, you are a deplorable racist who must have no peace, no place, no say, no voice in their new society. Jews and Israel fit into their hateful ideology. We see that with Ilhan Omar. But the fight has only just begun. Before we get there, I want to show you this. This is what we're up against with what's going on in Britain and what's going on in America. This was a slide I had in my, the Corbyn threat to Israel. He made this statement in 2014 and he's kept to it today. The UK has a very close relationship with Israel, and it's time that relationship was brought to an end. He means what he said. Last year and this year annual Labour conference, they only voted on one foreign policy to be their priority, and that was Palestine. No Iran, no Middle East, no Syria, no North Korea, nothing, Palestine. And then we have on the other side the new faces of the Democratic Party with Ilhan Omar Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. This lady sits on the US Foreign Affairs Committee. And with her anti-Semitism, you would have thought the Democratic Party would do the right thing and remove her from the Foreign Affairs Committee. They didn't. They didn't. She was making these remarks, anti-Semitic remarks. I'll be coming to anti-Semitism in a while. But so far as Ilhan Omar, she was making anti-Semitic remarks. And I want to remind you of something about Ilhan Omar. Just think about this. She was born and raised in Somalia, where there were no Jews. She went from Somalia to Kenya, where there were no Jews. And then she came to America, where she went to Minnesota and studied in North Dakota State University, where there probably didn't meet any Jews there. In fact, the first time effectively she met Jews is when she started campaigning for Congress. And the Jews she met were the ones that were thrilled, the progressive Jews who were thrilled that this woman of color from Somalia, refugee, a female, would represent them, the nice face of the progressives, in Congress for district in Minnesota, in the House. So they worked for her. They organized for her. They donated to her campaign. And once she's got a foot in power, she opens her mouth and said, it's all about the Benjamins, baby, means money. So where did this anti-Semitism come from? The first Jews that she met were the ones on her side, and yet she spited them. This is another issue on a presentation I give here or somewhere else with regard to Ilhan Omar. But let's press on. The fight back, as I said, has begun, and we're having some successes. The United States, have introduced legislation which has outlawed BDS. 28 states have done that up till today. Slowly, European nations are also introducing anti-BDS legislation. The Czech Republic, just last week. Those of you who don't know what BDS is, Boycotts, Divestments and Sanctions Campaign. When I was in Holland, I gave a talk at the, I'm going to tell you what happened, probably a Q&A later on, but I want to press it this way. Because I gave a talk at the Jewish Liberal Center in Amsterdam. And my talk there was infiltrated by 3 of the leading members of the BDS movement. And I'll talk about that maybe later if somebody wants me to, about what happened there. It's a very interesting anecdote. But, you know, in Amsterdam, if I go there, if I'm going past sometimes, I eat at falafel at the Moti Falafel Bar, which is an Israeli guy, has a falafel bar in Amsterdam. And I was quite interested by this photograph of a guy who is a BDS activist who came from a demonstration in Dam Square, felt hungry, and went into an Israeli-owned falafel bar to have his lunch. Look at the back. Boycott Israel. But he took his hunger out at the Motis falafel bar, an Israeli falafel bar. That's the humorous side of it. But on the other side, we have this, because every weekend there is this demonstration going on every weekend without fail by the pro-Palestinians BDS movement. And there's 2 Christian girls, Sabine and Brenda, who bring people together with their Israeli flags to demonstrate against the demonstrators and to celebrate Israel. But what happened is that one of the people that she brought got into an argument with the BDS people, the pro-Palestinian, and he ended up having to have an ambulance service to take him to see his injury. I like this sort of poster. I'm a Jew and 1.5 million Arabs live in my state. The other guy, I'm a Gazan and 0 Jews live in my state, but she's racist, not me. But you can see even this is false, because you can see, he says, Palestine, see Palestinian, I don't think so. This is why I wrote the book BDS for Idiots. Because quite frankly, from an Israeli perspective, than more noise, sound and thunder meaning nothing. And I call my book, if people look at the back, look at Israel honestly and let's see how far you get. I call it a seriously funny humiliation of BDS activists. And those of you who are interested in campaigning for Israel really have to learn a bit of background to get some facts, to get some arguments together and methodology, and then then you could be more effective when it comes to arguing or speaking up for Israel. But my contribution also here with regard to BDS is also to highlight the connection between BDS activists and terrorism. BDS in South Africa invited Leila Khaled, convicted plane hijacker, Palestinian hijacker, to go to South Africa to help them fundraise for BDS. She was received as an honoured guest, by the way, while she was there, by the South African government. This was the TWA plane that she wanted to hijack. BDS Terror Alliance. This is why the Ministry of Strategic Affairs put out a booklet called Terrorists in Suits about the connections and the ties between NGOs promoting BDS and terror organizations. Very useful brochure to have because it gives you the facts of the connection between BDS activists and actual convicted terrorists. The true face of BDS. The supposed co-founder of BDS, Omar Barghouti, who was educated in Tel Aviv University, says, "We oppose a Jewish state." That basically means what they're standing for. They're not for a two-state solution, although they may say so. The real aim of BDS is to bring down the state of Israel. Assad Abu Khalil, leading BDS activist. BDS means the end of the Jewish state. An active BDS activist, Ahmed Moore. Shoot the Jew, which was chanted by BDS activists in South Africa. I think you're always going to have tension in the Middle East when there are people who want to kill the Jews and the Jews who don't want to be killed, and neither side is willing to compromise. Frank feeling. My contribution to this debate has been the result of some research that I've been doing over several years, which led to the book Fighting Hamas, BDS, and Anti-Semitism. And this has been to expose the intersectionality, and I apologize for stealing an expression of the progressive, regressive left, of the Palestinian activism and anti-Semitism. And my book, The Fighting Hamas, BDS, and Anti-Semitism, is a manifesto for those wanting to prove the anti-Semitism, the Jew hatred that is at the core of everything connected to the Palestinian state, from the Palestinian Authority to Hamas to Islamic Jihad to what's the campus activities to even like the statements of people like the institutionalized Labour Party, anti-Semitic Labour Party and Corbyn. The Labour Party is not just institutionally anti-Semitic, the Labour Party is institutionally anti-Israel. And before I spoke about the words of Ilhan Omar, she talks about the evils of Israel and the Jews and their money. The connection is always there. For those of you who want to go to my Facebook page, just a few days ago, I uploaded a video interview I did with a woman called Kay Wilson, who was a miraculous survivor of a horrendous Palestinian terror attack. Her friend was killed. It's an interesting video. You must watch it. You can get it on my Facebook page, or if you give me your email address, I'll send it to you. I insisted that a part in my interview would be inserted. There's about a 20, 30-second clip in there of her interrogators when her terrorists were caught and that's a tale in itself, you have to watch the video for, was taken by the Israeli police interrogators to the site of the crime where it took place. And you will hear the Israeli police interrogator saying to one of the terrorists, one of the murderers, "Why did you do it?" And he said, "To kill." "To kill what?" He said, "To kill Jews." He never said Israelis. He wasn't doing it for a Palestinian cause or anything like that. He did it, they went out, they waited for a vulnerable victim, they found these two women and they stabbed them to death. In many cases, close to death. And they did it for one reason only, because they were Jews. The tragedy of that was that Kay's friend, Christine, was not Jewish. These are the facts that have to be put out for people who champion the Palestinian cause. They choose the language of victimhood, human rights, social justice for Palestinians. But as with the BDS bonehead I'll talk about later, no matter how they try, it's anti-Semitism that is driving them. Despite their protests, they have no genuine concerns for the Palestinians. That's another part of the methodology I put over. You can catch them out. They really basically don't give a damn for the Palestinians, and I can prove it over again. I'll do it later on if you wish. But at the same time, what they're doing is exploiting the Palestinians as a club to beat Israel with, because Israel is the Jewish state. And they do it as they attempt to cover up their insidious anti-Semitism. We need to apply lawfare, legislation, and a broader activism to hit them, punish them, and set them back. Let me show you. This is part of what I'm talking about. BDS anti-Semitism exposed. It has to be exposed over and over again. We have to name them and shame them. I talk about activism and the problems we have. One of the problems we have is they have a treasure trove of money, and we are paupers when it comes to this battle. This was a photograph taken on the London Tube last week. Boycott Israel. Boycott Israel. Boycott Israel. This was happening outside my favourite football club, Manchester City. Love City, hate racism, drop Puma, PEP. There's a campaign. Pep. Oh, drop Pep, Puma Pep. There's a campaign going on. There was a campaign going on in Manchester and London. Banners, signs, everything, to boycott Israel. Why? Boycott Puma outside Sports Direct. See all the Palestinian flags over there? Here's another one. This is Manchester. UK stop arming Israel. Look at all the Palestinian flags. UK stop arming Israel. Gaza, free everything. What's interesting is this one over here. Jewish Voices of Labour, participating in an anti-Israel rally, pro-Palestinian. On our side, Harry Saul Markham with his megaphone and Israeli flags, bringing a message, a pro-Israel message in London, in the rain. This is outside the Puma store that the BDS wants to boycott. This is Harry, part of his, he wrote UK. This is him lecturing what is Judaism. The new generation can be thankful people and activists like Harry Markham. And therefore I want to introduce you people to Harry Markham because he's here in the audience with us right now. Harry, come up here. There you go.
Here's a schmooze, isn't he, folks? Shalom, gentlemen and ladiesmen. It's my honor to speak to a crowd so useful, of course. I was thinking about what I wanted to say to you tonight, and I was thinking of David Ben-Gurion, and I can't remember the exact quote, but he said words to the effect of, the Jewish worry shouldn't be about what the Goyim think, it should be about what we think. And I'm looking at the world, and Barry gives us examples of anti-Semitism around the world. Yeah, it exists. It always exists. It's always existed. But who are we? What are we doing about it? Okay, I live with anti-Semites. Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not too distressed because I just read our history books. And anti-Semitism is an axiomatic inevitability. It pops up in all periods of our history. What does distress me is the Jewish situation. I go around, so I have the honour and the privilege of being National Director of Cherut UK. We are the educational movement of unapologetic Zionism. So I spend a great deal of my time at university campuses, schools, community centres, and elsewhere, bringing Jews closer to Zionism. But recently, many JSOCs have decided to no platform me. Their reasons have been that we don't want to mention the I word, or the Z word, Zionism, because we may alienate Jewish students as a result of doing an event to do with Zionism. And as a result, Jewish students at these universities feel rightly outraged, and some of them, in fact very few of them, have decided to set up an Israel Society. But where have we gone wrong? Why is it, ladies and gentlemen, that we cannot reconcile Jewishness with Zionism? Zionism was a very sexy, sorry, I'm a pacer, I'll end up going backwards and forwards, but can you hear me in the back, or
Yeah. Yes.
do I need my microphone or not?
Yes.
Do I need it? I'll have it, okay, sorry, right, okay, my apologies. I won't, I'll just jump up and down. What was I saying? Yes. Why can't we reconcile Jewishness with Zionism? Zionism was a very sexy ideology. It was about liberation, empowerment. It was about liberating a people from the shackles of persecution, and as a result of that liberation, empowering them to find self-determination. But today, when I was at a rally a few days ago in London, there were banners that said, "Stop killing children." I recently, my bag is over here, I'm just going to, actually I don't need it, but if you go back to the slide, sorry, that's my bag, yeah. In my bag, I have a very, thank you. Amongst all my gubbins, I have a very cool flat scarf that I normally wear everywhere now, which is a flag in solidarity with Rojava, where Kurds are being systematically persecuted by the terrorist in suit Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, and I wear this, and I was marching for Kurdistan every week in London. And I wear kippah normally, and I wear an Israeli pin badge, and everyone can see me. I'm like, and this big Yiddish punim, everyone can see my nose, my horns, my money, whatever. And I had one person that said something to me, and he said, "You shouldn't be on this march, you're a child killer." This wasn't a Kurd. This was not a lefty, non-Jewish, old, vegan, gender fluid, Extinction Rebellion person. This was a Jew. The one criticism I was subjected to was from a Jewish opponent of Zionism, because he said, "I am a child killer." Where have we gone wrong? And as a result, as the National Director of Cherut, I became National Director because I wanted to bring Jews closer to Zionism. Zionism, the movement that has given the Jewish people the right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland, is no different to how others have been liberated and empowered. When homosexuality was decriminalised in the UK, in 1967, gay people were liberated from years of homophobic and heteronormative controlled society. But they have since been empowered by movements like Stonewall to further their rights. Women were liberated when they were given universal suffrage, I believe, in 1928, and have since been empowered by movements like feminism to advance their rights. And we Jews have too. So when I'm speaking to young people, my principal objective, I do advocacy, we do the stuff of going on the streets, talking to people, changing hearts and minds, but ultimately, folks, there is a tremendous futility in doing so, because we're just outnumbered. So I'm not really bothered by what these people think about us. I don't care. They exist. I care about who we are. And my concern is Jews. And we must, I only have a few seconds to speak, so I'm being cautious of time. We must bring Jews close to Zionism. We cannot engage Jews in any form of activism, whether that be challenging the malicious lies of the BDS, promoting Israel to the non-Jewish public, without first giving them a relationship to Zionism. On Wednesday, I'm on a panel in Leeds, if any of you here from Leeds, and good place. I'm on a panel at Leeds University, and I shall be discussing what we can do to bring Jews closer to Zionism. And now more than ever, our focus mustn't be on just reacting, it must be doing something proactive. And that proactive Zionism is about making Jews firstly not fear the word Zionism, not fear Israel, and be able to discuss it without apology, or without, as Menachem Begin said, trembling knees. Ladies and gentlemen, you have all been gorgeous, fabulous, and incredible, as I'm sure you always are. And I shall pass you back to Barrett, or we're both doing Q&A now, so yes.
Well, there you are, you see. With somebody like Harry over here, I think our future's in good hands. We need more Harrys in the world. Barrys and Harrys against the world. I think we have a short amount of time for Q&A. Have anybody had any questions before we close the show? That's it? Okay. Thank you very much for...
You're going to tell us one of your lovely stories. I can't remember what it was.
Sorry?
You're going to tell us one of your stories if you have time.
All right. I'll wrap with this. Thank you, Harry. I'll wrap with this because it's very interesting. You know, I make the point, if I'm talking to people who are being active for Israel, and it sounds strange, but take Israel out of the equation. So this BDS guy, who was there he came with his brown shirt and two companions with a sticker on his vest over here, with the Palestinian flag saying boycott Israel, and another one on his arm. And I gave my spiel for about 40 minutes in front of this Jewish audience. He came to Q&A. One of the first people to put his hand up was this guy. So he got up and he started to rant and talk and everything. But obviously what he wanted to do, he'd heard what I said, and he wanted to counter it with the pro-Palestinian message, right? Ethnic cleansing, Israel apartheid straight, illegal occupation of Gaza, all the usual nonsense, okay? So I told him that, okay, I want to prove to you that in fact you don't give a damn about the Palestinians and you're really anti-Semite. No, he said, I know some of the people in the audience, they're fine. I said, well, let me prove it. You talked about, for instance, this is how you need your facts in order to do it. You spoke, for instance, about what you called Israel the apartheid state. I said, you really support the Palestinians? Yes, I do. I speak up for them. Okay. So why didn't you speak up for them about true apartheid against the Palestinians? Where? I said, in Jordan. Have you ever thought about that? No. Jordan is a country where over 1 million Arabs who claim to be Palestinians have been living for 60, 70 years in refugee camps, stateless, not allowed higher education, not allowed government jobs. That is true apartheid by Jordan. So I said, so where's your sticker saying boycott Jordan? You want to have boycott Israel? Put another one there. Boycott. You don't. Now, what about ethnic cleansing? You said ethnic cleansing? We ethnic cleansing Palestinians? The population of the Palestinians have increased both in what you call the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. But you know where actual ethnic cleansing is being taken against the Palestinians? And this was, don't forget, just 3 months before or after Assad had barrel-bombed the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria, killing, what, 3,000 Palestinians and making thousands more homeless. So I said, have you ever demonstrated outside the Syrian embassy in The Hague? No. So I said, okay, you talk about the boycott, the blockade, the illegal blockade of Gaza. I said, I'm going to put a question to you. And I said, tell me how many trucks a day go into Gaza from Israel?
1,000.
Silence. And I waited. Give it a few seconds. I said, give it your best shot. How many trucks a day go into Gaza? He wouldn't say. I said, let me tell you, 800 to 1,000 trucks a day go into Gaza from Israel. We Jews are supposed to be smart. Is this the way that we conduct a blockade of Gaza? So you're lying about an illegal blockade. First of all, it's not illegal anyway, but 1,000 trucks isn't exactly a blockade. But tell me, how many trucks a day go into Gaza from Egypt? Speechless. Come on, again, give it a shot. One answer. I said, I'll tell you how many trucks go into Gaza from Egypt. Zippo. So if you care about the Palestinians, why aren't you protesting or saying boycott Egypt? So I've caught you out here. I've showed you 3 examples of senators against the Palestinians in Syria, in Jordan, and in Egypt, where you do absolutely nothing. And you're supposed to tell us that you care for the Palestinians when it's really only boycott Israel you've got on your shirt? I said, you don't give a damn for the Palestinians. You simply use them, exploit them as a club to hit Israel with. And Israel is the Jewish state. And that makes you, in my book, an anti-Semite. That's the way you discuss or debate bonehead BDS idiots. And this gave cause to this, because I hear their words and I hear their arguments. And you don't have to say Israel does wonderful things. We know we do wonderful things. But you have to confront these people in their own language, in their own words, and expose what liars they are. I did that because I will never convert this hater. He will still remain deep behind, underneath it, an anti-Semite. But I did it for the audience, so they would know where truth and justice lies. And that's on our side as well. So there is a way to fight BDS and the Palestinian or pro-Palestinian camp without having to defend Israel. This is going on the offensive, using their arguments and their lies and exposing them to an audience, to the middle ground, because that's the hearts and minds that we really want to capture. That's that one. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that answered your question succinctly. But I want to thank you for coming, and I really want you to become more active for Israel. As Harry said, as Barry says, we need your help in every way we can do it. And there are ways that you can help, and please contact me, or if you're in England, contact Harry, because he needs more activists also. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, by the way, if you need any books, 6 shekel each or 2 for 100.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much both to Barry and Harry. And if you would come up, please, Barry, I want to make a little presentation to you. And it's this certificate is presented by the MacDonald International Shul with grateful thanks to Barry Shaw in appreciation for his lecture, Hasbara 2020, The Challenges of Israel Public Diplomacy in the Year Ahead, and they are many. Please
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please enjoy some light.